17 seconds may be enough. Enough to begin changing the direction of your life. That may sound almost too simple. We are used to thinking that real change requires a dramatic decision, a major breakthrough, or a complete reinvention of who we are. But many important shifts begin much earlier, in a moment so small that we barely notice it. The moment when we hold a thought long enough for the body to begin responding to it. A passing thought has very little weight. It appears, then disappears. But when you stay with a thought for 17 seconds, something begins to happen. Emotion gathers around it. The nervous system starts listening. The body begins to adjust. What started as a simple idea slowly becomes an inner state. And your inner state matters because it shapes the way you meet the rest of the day. You may spend those 17 seconds repeating the same fear. Nothing is changing. I am already falling behind. This will never work. Or you may choose a different direction. I am safe in this moment. There is still a way forward. Today does not have to repeat yesterday. This does not mean one thought will magically transform your entire life. The universe is not waiting with a stopwatch. But every change begins somewhere. And sometimes, the first step is much smaller than we imagine. Before the phone lights up, before the next worry takes over, before the mind returns to its familiar pattern, there is still a brief window in which you can choose what you want to strengthen. That is the power hidden inside 17 seconds. This is Momentum Arc, a space for inner exploration and spiritual growth. Your likes, comments, subscriptions, and super thanks do more than support this work. They help this energy reach more souls who are ready for real change. Dr. Jeffrey Fannin is known in the world of neuroscience, consciousness studies, and personal transformation for exploring the relationship between brain activity, thought patterns, and human potential. In his work, Harnessing the Power of Thought 3, he presents a simple but striking idea. Attention is not passive, it is a signal. The mind is not merely a private theater where thoughts appear and disappear without consequence. Every focused thought has an effect on the nervous system. It shapes emotion, changes bodily state, and begins forming a pattern the brain can strengthen through repetition. Fannin's work often bridges scientific language and spiritual insight. He studies brain waves, neural networks, and the way intention may interact with the larger energetic environment around the body. His central message is not that a thought instantly bends the world to our will. It is more grounded than that. When attention becomes steady enough, it begins organizing the mind, the body, and the field of perception around a new direction. This is where the idea of 17 seconds becomes useful. 17 seconds is not a magic spell. It is not a shortcut that replaces practice, discipline, or embodied change. It is better understood as a threshold of inner coherence, a point at which a thought stops being a passing mental spark and begins becoming a felt state. When you hold a vision steadily for even this short amount of time, without immediately contradicting it, the thought begins drawing emotion toward itself. And once emotion joins thought, the signal becomes stronger. That signal may be quiet. It may not produce visible results immediately, but it can interrupt the old rhythm. It can become the first clean pulse sent into a life that has been repeating fear, doubt, and limitation for too long. The real power of the 17-second practice is not in the number alone. It is in the quality of attention you bring to that number. Why 17 seconds? Why not 16? Why not 18? The number should not be treated as rigid physics or a religious formula. It is more helpful to see it as a symbol for the first critical interval of sustained focus. Most thoughts do not survive long enough to matter. They appear, flicker, and vanish. A wish rises, then doubt interrupts it. A vision begins to form, then the mind immediately explains why it cannot happen. 17 seconds asks you to do something surprisingly difficult. Stay with one clear thought long enough for it to stop being scattered. At first, that may sound easy, but anyone who has tried it knows how quickly the mind escapes. It jumps to the inbox, the bill, the conversation from yesterday, the fear of what might go wrong. The practice reveals how rarely we are actually alone with a chosen thought. When you remain with one intention for 17 seconds, something begins to gather. The thought becomes less like a passing cloud and more like a tuning fork. Your emotion starts responding to it. Your breathing changes. Your body begins to take the thought more seriously. This is where resonance begins. Imagine dropping a small stone into a still lake. The stone is tiny, but the ripples do not stay tiny. They move outward. They touch the surface. They disturb what had seemed unmoving. A focused thought works in a similar way. You may not be able to trace every ripple, but you can feel when something inside you has shifted. This is why mental clarity matters. A scattered mind is like muddy water. There is movement, but no clean direction. If the thought is mixed with worry, contradiction, and emotional noise, the signal weakens. But when attention becomes simple, steady, and alive, the 17 seconds begin to carry force. To work with this practice is to learn how to purify attention, not by suppressing the mind, but by choosing what deserves your full inner consent. Human beings have always sensed that the outer world is not completely separate from inner life. Ancient traditions spoke of harmony between heaven and humanity. Modern physics speaks, in its own language, about observation, fields, and the strange relationship between possibility and manifestation. The point is not to reduce spirituality to science or science to metaphor. The point is simpler. Consciousness participates in the way we meet reality. Your thoughts and emotions are not weightless. They carry tone. They carry charge. They shape what you notice, how you act, what you avoid, and what kind of world your nervous system expects to meet. If a thought is the button that begins the process, emotion is the engine that gives it movement. A thought can appear quickly, but by itself it often lacks staying power. When thought and feeling join, the signal becomes more coherent. That is why trying to manifest wealth while feeling unworthy, afraid, and secretly convinced it will never happen often produces very little. The words may say one thing, but the emotional signal says another. If your vision is financial freedom, the practice is not to repeat the phrase while your body remains trapped in panic. The practice is to enter the felt experience of freedom, even briefly, to see the scene, to hear the message arriving, to feel the relief in the chest, the softness in the belly, the quiet confidence that says, "This life is not foreign to me." You do not need to fake happiness. You need to let the body taste the state you are moving toward. For 17 seconds, you step into the atmosphere of what you desire, as if the door has already opened. Not as fantasy, but as rehearsal. Not as escape, but as inner alignment. The universe responds less to the words you use and more to the feeling those words carry. Once the feeling becomes clear, stable, and believable enough to inhabit, the old inner resistance begins to soften. What blocked you starts becoming part of the path. 17 seconds is only the beginning. It will not complete the whole journey for you, but it can open the first gate. If 17 seconds creates the first spark, then 34 seconds gives the spark more air. 51 seconds steadies the flame. The longer you remain in a clean, coherent state, the more the nervous system begins learning that this new state is possible. You have probably experienced this in ordinary life. A small good thing happens in the morning. A kind message, a stranger's compliment, a brief moment of beauty on the street. If you let that feeling stay with you, the whole day can begin to change. You notice more ease. You respond with more warmth. You become available to better timing. It is not that the entire universe has changed in an instant. Your state has changed, and because your state has changed, your perception, choices, and responses change with it. The opposite is also familiar. A careless driver cuts you off. Irritation flashes through the body. You replay it. You tell someone about it. They agree with your anger, and suddenly the low-frequency state becomes more solid. The rest of the day begins carrying the same tone. A slow cashier becomes unbearable. A small mistake feels personal. One old irritation turns into an entire chain of resistance. That chain often begins in the first few seconds after a thought arrives. This is why the morning matters. The first emotional direction of the day can become the seed for everything that follows. If those first 17 seconds are filled with resentment, fear, or complaint, that state can quietly organize the hours ahead. But if they are held with gratitude, trust, or calm expectation, they can set a different rhythm in motion. The universe does not judge whether your focus is positive or negative. It reflects the nature of what you repeatedly energize. So the practice is not dramatic. It is deeply practical. At the beginning of the day, and at every small turning point, pause long enough to choose the signal you are about to amplify. For beginners, the 17-second practice does not require complicated theory. It begins with the most basic skill, learning to stay with one clear intention without immediately abandoning it. Choose a quiet place where you will not be interrupted. Sit comfortably. Let the body settle. Put away anything that pulls your attention outward. Before you begin, name the intention in simple language. Not something vague or theatrical, but something clear enough for the mind to hold. For example, I am opening to greater financial stability. Or, I am ready to meet the next right opportunity. Or, I allow myself to move with confidence today. Then hold that intention for 17 seconds. Do not grip it. Do not chase the clock. Let the sentence become a felt image. See a scene that matches it. Let the body participate. If the mind wanders, return gently. If doubt appears, do not fight it. Come back to the intention as if placing a hand on the center of the chest. When the 17 seconds are complete, stay quiet for a few more breaths. Let the body digest the state. Then release the practice. Do not immediately demand proof. Do not inspect reality like a suspicious accountant waiting for evidence. Simply return to the day with a slightly different posture. Keeping a journal can help. Write down the intention, the feeling in the body, any resistance that appeared, and any later insight or small synchronicity you notice. Over time, you begin to see how your inner world responds to repeated attention. For people already familiar with meditation, yoga, breath work, or other inner practices, the 17-second method can become a powerful amplifier. Use it at the beginning of meditation to gather focus. Use it at the end to plant a clear direction. Use it when fear rises, before the old reaction takes control. You can also expand the intention beyond personal desire. For 17 seconds, hold the wish that more people receive help, that your work serves others, that your success becomes part of a larger field of benefit. When intention opens beyond the small self, the practice becomes more spacious and often more powerful. The goal is not to control every outcome. The goal is to train the mind and body to enter coherence on purpose. Sometimes, after beginning this kind of practice, life may seem to get worse for a while. That does not always mean the practice has failed. Often, it means the old signal is becoming visible. The patterns you carried unconsciously begin showing themselves because you are finally paying attention. If your reality begins to move in the wrong direction, the answer is not to force positivity harder. It is to step back and ask honestly, do I actually believe the intention I am holding? Or am I repeating words while my deeper state is still filled with fear, pressure, and self-doubt? Negative energy often has more authority in us than we realize. Not because it is stronger by nature, but because we have practiced it longer. Anxiety, blame, and fear can become familiar pathways. The body may return to them automatically, even when the conscious mind wants something better. In those moments, be gentle. Before trying to focus on a vision, soften the fear underneath it. Breathe. Write down what you are feeling. Walk slowly. Talk to someone you trust. Let the nervous system loosen before asking it to carry a new signal. Then return to 17 seconds. Not as a demand, not as an emergency spell, as a quiet act of inner realignment. When the signal becomes clear again, even briefly, you may feel a subtle shift. Less force, less panic. A sense that something is moving without your constant pressure. That is the beginning of alignment. Reality may still take time to respond, but you are no longer feeding the same old current. 17 seconds will not solve every problem instantly. It cannot replace long-term practice, honest action, or emotional healing. But its power lies in its simplicity. It gives you a place to begin again. No matter how confused or discouraged you feel, you still have this moment. You still have one breath. You still have the ability to choose where your attention lands next. Every 17 seconds of clear focus is a small light you send into the field of your life. When those lights begin to connect, they form a path. Quietly, steadily, they guide you back toward the version of yourself that was never truly lost.